This is a book that examines three periods of Reconstruction in American history: 1865 to 1898, 1954 to 1968, and 2008 to the present. And it's part memoir as well. I really look at the way in which Black history has helped me as somebody who's the son of immigrants who came to the United States from Haiti, and who were really interested in history, both Haitian history, but African American history, and Caribbean and West African history. And growing up in New York City in the 1980s, racially segregated, a lot of racial violence in New York City, but at the same time, the narrative we were told in my all-Black school, St. Joe was that the civil rights movement had allowed us to overcome, even though we were living in a racially segregated neighborhood and had gone to attending a racially segregated school. So in a lot of ways, the book just really looks at what the stories we tell ourselves about the past, how they impact the present. So from that perspective, it's really looking at these issues of American exceptionalism, and how Reconstruction and understanding the period of Reconstruction really impacts how we view contemporary American history, not just the civil rights period, the second Reconstruction, but the present today. In a lot of ways, the book examines these sort of two competing stories that we tell ourselves. One is a Reconstructionist story, which is advocated by supporters of multiracial democracy. So from that perspective, it's this idea that, like Lincoln said at Gettysburg, there's a new birth of freedom that comes with the Civil War, and we're really a transformed and renewed republic in that context. And in the other version, the other story is the story of the lost cause and redemptionism. So redemptionists are, they're not only just advocates of white supremacy, they really are advocates of a very, very specific kind of authoritarian, anti-democratic, racist, patriarchal, anti-Semitic worldview that has a lot of enduring power in America as just a story. And sometimes we call it the lost cause, but that redemptionist perspective, which sanctions and justifies really horrific violence and whole institutions and instruments of punishment, is really baked into ideas of American exceptionalism. It's baked into presidential administrations. It's even baked into the post-war civil rights era as well. And so it's that story is toggled between Reconstructionist and redemptionist. And so in a lot of ways, the Third Reconstruction makes the argument that without understanding those two stories, we're never going to understand why we're in the predicament we're in, and why there are waves of backlash, even amidst at times racial progress. When we think about the civil rights movement, we're usually thinking about the post-war civil rights movement. So in that sense, it provides us with a longer view, this idea of the Third Reconstruction, and looking at the civil rights movement as a second Reconstruction that tries to complete aspects of the first, but really, I think from looking at the three periods of Reconstruction, we can see where the second Reconstruction in certain ways is not as ambitious as the first, because in the first Reconstruction, you really do have this idea of economic and political power going hand in hand, this idea of equity and not just racial integration, this idea that Black people are going to lead and be at the cutting edge of democratic institutions in higher education, but also in federal and state and local politics. I think by the second Reconstruction, in a lot of ways, some of the most radical edges of that Reconstructionist perspective are missing because people are looking for symbols of dignity and symbols of citizenship, and things get boiled down to public accommodations and voting rights, and not things like wealth equity, and not things like you know Black people having ownership of land and having a real foothold in terms of corporate and economic power in the United States. So, in a lot of ways, what the book does is allow us to see different convergences and divergences by taking us back and looking at that long Reconstruction period. And you're able to also see the politics of backlash and how those politics are really a consistent feature in American society. But sometimes we call it different things. In the 1860s and 1870s, we called it the Klan. In the 1950s and 60s, we call it massive resistance. But they're both symbols and artifacts of white supremacy, right? And so in a lot of ways, it allows us to see the fact that the civil rights movement, the heroic period of the civil rights movement, the Second Reconstruction, is just a continuation of this longer struggle for freedom and dignity and citizenship and democracy. I spent a lot of attention and time on Black women and different leaders like Ida B. Wells and Angela Davis, and in the contemporary period, Stacey Abrams and the Kimberly Crenshaws and the Alicia Garzas, and the way in which Black women have always been co-architects of these insurgent democratic movements, but really came to the fore during this third period of Reconstruction. The cool thing about being a historian is that you can get to the bottom of a lot of different issues just by tracing the history of those issues. So in that sense, it helps us, the Third Reconstruction helps us with the present by examining what are the origin stories of how we got into this ongoing perpetual crisis that we've been in.